How would you describe the character of a neighbor? Where do they live? What makes them tick? Who is my neighbor? You're watching Timeless Talks, Timeless Subjects, Information for Life. In this video, we're going to examine the misinformation about who neighbors should be. And we will answer the question, who is your neighbor? But we're also going to give you 3 different bonuses. They are 3 essential concepts to support whoever your neighbor is. And if you want even more about this subject, you need to get over to timelesstalks.net and see the additional resources that are available. Now, let's dive into this very familiar Bible story, but be warned. If you think you know it, then that is when you will probably miss an important detail. So be careful. Follow along in your own Bible. The story is found in Luke chapter 10, verses 25 through 37. A lawyer came to Jesus with an evil intention. His plan was to ask Jesus questions in hopes that Jesus would make a controversial response or even be wrong. A snafu by Jesus would allow the lawyer to devalue everything Jesus had ever said. This would be a big victory for the lawyer and improve his political standing among those other elitists. He asked Jesus just one question. What shall I do to inherit eternal life? That's always a good question, isn't it? But not this case. You see, he wasn't really interested in eternal life. He was already a religious lawyer. He was an expert in that Old Testament. He, of all people, should know. Now, Jesus didn't answer it directly, but challenged that lawyer to answer his own question from those Old Testament scriptures. And the lawyer quoted from the Shema by saying, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." Jesus just told the man had answered correctly. He then told the lawyer to go do what it said. Love God with your whole being and your neighbor as yourself. Instead of looking smart and catching Jesus in a blunder, it was he who looked foolish, silly, and was probably embarrassed. He looked like someone who knew what that law said, but was not doing it. He did not love God. He was not loving his neighbor. So he determined to justify himself and not look so ignorant or even stupid. Hey, right now is the perfect place to give you one of those 3 bonuses. You see, bonus number 1 has to do with self-justification. That is why so many lies are told to other people. And sometimes we lie to ourselves. And we keep personal secrets laid deep. But here is your bonus. You shall live in such a way that you do not need to justify yourself to others. Philippians chapter 2, verse 15 tells us that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God without blemish, in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world. The lawyer was attempting to justify himself, so in verse 29, he asked Jesus to define who a neighbor was. He said, "And who is my neighbor?" Now we need a little bit of background. The Pharisees and lawyer had a strict, narrow definition of neighbor. You see, a Jew's neighbor only had 2 qualities. First, they were full-blooded Jews. And second, they worshiped only God only in Jerusalem. The lawyer's definition excluded all people who were not thoroughbred Jews. It's like those mixed-race Samaritans, and certainly all Gentiles. Their definition started with a narrow group of full-blooded Jews and then shrunk it further by worshiping only at Jerusalem. Their narrow definition made it where they were not required to love hardly anyone else. Is this the answer you need to the question, who is my neighbor? No. This is a good time for that second bonus. Do not have a narrow definition of who a neighbor is. Neighbors are more than people of our own race. I would like to remind my light-skinned friends that Jesus was a Jew. Jews are brown-skinned, and Jesus was a Jew. He was brown-skinned, not like the artists have shown us for years and years and centuries. Would you exclude Jesus as being a neighbor because he had a different skin color than you do? And this bonus has actually got a second part. We must not say that our neighbor is only the people that we worship with. Just as before, far too narrow. Check out Galatians chapter 6, verse 10. So then, as we have opportunity, let us do good to everyone, and especially to those of the household of faith. Our definition must be bigger than fellow worshipers. Now, let's get back to the story. Jesus answered the lawyer and our question of who is my neighbor by defining the word neighbor with a story. An individual was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho on a road well known as Red and Bloody Way, all because of the violence on that road. The man does get ambushed. He's beaten within an inch of his life. The muggers take everything they wanted, including his clothes, and they left him half dead, and they just left that to happen. Later, by chance, a priest came by. All Jews, and certainly educated priests, would know to do something according to the law. They would have known Exodus 23, verse 4. If you meet your enemy's ox or his donkey going astray, you shall bring it back to him. Or they would know Isaiah 58, verse 7. Is it not to share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see the naked, to clothe him, and not to hide yourself from your own flesh? If they knew this was the way to treat animals and the homeless, shouldn't they help a man in such dire trouble? But after that priest had thoroughly observed the man, he kept as far away as possible. He didn't want to get involved. He was a man who knew better, but did not do better. Then a Levite come along and found the same man, still beaten, still clinging to life. But he too walked by as far away as possible. He too did not want to get involved. He knew better, but did not do better. These two religious leaders acted just like the lawyer. The lawyer knew better, but was not doing better. And then a Samaritan came by. He evaluated the situation too, and he knew this man needed help and needed it now. Take note. First, Samaritans were a mixed race people, and second, for centuries, they had lived to the north and worshiped God at Mount Gerizim, not Jerusalem. The lawyer would never considered this man to be a neighbor, but this Samaritan had one thing that the priest, the Levite, and the lawyer did not have. He had compassion, empathy, humanness. Unfortunately for him, there was no 911 he could call. It was a Samaritan who did basic first responder aid and transported the man to an inn where medical care could take place. It was a Samaritan who paid 2 days' wages in advance for the man's care. And it was a trustworthy Samaritan who promised to pay any amount additional for the man's care if it were needed. Jesus looked and asked the lawyer which of the 3 men was actually a neighbor. He's asking the lawyer if that narrow definition would still apply. The lawyer's answer revealed a change. The lawyer said it was the one who was merciful, that was empathetic, tender, humane. It's my opinion that the lawyer couldn't say the Samaritan. He would have choked him. But what he said was far better anyway. Jesus did not fuss at the lawyer. He did not condemn the man's definition. He did not insult that well-educated lawyer for having such a bigoted concept. But Jesus kindly, graciously tells this lawyer to do the same thing. Be merciful. Are you ready? Here is the answer you've been waiting for. A neighbor is someone who begins with a compassionate heart that leads to merciful action. Think about it. How many times in the gospel do you read of Jesus being compassionate? And we're all being told through this story to be compassionate. Right now, someone needs your help, your compassion. Care for the sick, even those with COVID. Since they are confined at home, take them something comforting to their door. Knock on the door and then leave. And when you come up to an accident, and you will, or you find a mugging, don't pull out your phone and start recording. Call 911 and get involved. Be a neighbor. Demonstrate your love for them just as if they were your own family. Be a Samaritan. Be merciful. Jesus himself told us in Matthew 5, verse 7, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy." If you ever think you might need mercy in the future, be merciful now. And James says, "For judgment is without mercy to the one who has shown no mercy." Mercy triumphs over judgment. Can you remember who a neighbor is? A neighbor is someone who begins with a compassionate heart that leads to merciful action. Now, let's look at that last bonus. It's very important now. Now that you know who your neighbor is, what will you do? Since you know better, then do better. You see, being Bible smart will not save you. God will not reduce your punishment or increase your reward just because you know the Bible. It's a matter of doing it. Listen to James chapter 4, verse 17. "So whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin." For more information on these ideas, go over to timelesstalks.net and find the additional information from many sources, both text and video. The link you'll find is in the description. If you would like to discuss this or any other Bible subject, please use the contact page at timelesstalks.net. Or if you need prayers, there's a prayer request page there that you can use. We want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. At timelesstalks.net, we love you. Until we can visit again, goodbye for now.